Today's agenda is on screen at the moment, and we're going to be working through 5 core points. My goal is that by the end of today, I'm going to explain a little bit about why you should be interested in BI, where has the industry come from, and where is it today, what can you do with it, and what are some of the buzzing terms that you might be hearing. And to start with, let's talk a little bit about why BI has so much buzz at the moment. The information on screen has come from a variety of different sources, and it represents just a minute sampling of the kinds of data-related statistics that are pushed towards us every day. And the point here is not necessarily to focus on any one item, but instead it's just absorb the overall trend. There's more data available on more things and from more places than ever before, and this is only going to become more pervasive. The trend is strong and it's undeniable. But what we really need to be focusing on here, I think, is at the top there in blue, the banner headline. Less than 0.5% of all data is ever analysed or used. And when you consider the scale of the opportunity here, that is a staggering statistic. Businesses who get it are getting the benefit, and businesses who don't are disappearing. And before I push on, I'm going to just say a word on what I mean when I say businesses who get it. What does getting it mean? And at the same time, I'm just going to throw a poll up on the screen for a moment as well to throw some of the BI buzzwords that we're hearing at you and see what everybody thinks. So while that's on the screen, let me talk about getting it, or the light bulb moment, or the aha moment, or whatever you want to call it. It's different for almost every business, and this is a big problem for data projects. The buzz around BI is big because the potential for impact is big. On the previous slide, I deliberately didn't put up some of the kinds of statements that you see everywhere about the huge potential for bottom line benefit. And why not? Not because they can't happen or they don't happen, but because targeting those kinds of massive headline banners it's sometimes the single greatest barrier to achieving them. And that's a weird statement, I know, but here's what I mean by that. There are many, many successful examples of companies, Amazon and Google and whoever else, where BI and analytics is a foundation of their enterprise, where the business case was embedded into their mindset and the DNA of the business from day one, where the returns were quick, they were undeniable, and in fact, the business couldn't exist without BI and analytics. But if that was true for everyone in today's audience, you wouldn't be here. These kinds of businesses don't need me to tell them what the buzz around BI is. What is much more common is one of 3 types of businesses that are seeking their aha moment. And the first type is a business where there is an intellectual understanding that BI can deliver, or at least there's a curiosity or a suspicion that it can deliver. But there's also a caution about investing time or money into something that can still feel at times a little bit intangible. Throw in some of the buzzwords that we're going to talk about soon, and everything starts to look big and complicated and expensive and just too hard. The second type is similar, but it's also distinct. The appetite and the will is there. Different parts of the business are asking for data and BI, but the problems are the same. The opportunity looks big, but it also looks complicated and expensive and just too hard. The last is something entirely different, but once again, the problems are the same. Someone, and maybe that's a small team or maybe it's the entire business, can see an opportunity to drastically change or transform the business with data, but they don't quite know where to start or how to start. And the answer is often, as a result, well, we'll start by dabbling with some tool or the other and with a bit of data, and we'll see what we get. And what do you get? Well, all too often what you get is not much. And maybe you get some, that looks nice or that looks interesting type feedback, but the project never really gets any legs. Possibly even more damning is a project that never starts because it all just looks so monstrously overwhelming and no one ever bites off that first piece to chew with. It's impossible to achieve success without knowing what success looks like, without setting some sort of specific goals, and above all, without starting with a focus. The one universal way to have a BI aha moment is to start. Pick a use case, something meaningful, but with a bit of complexity. So it's not just we could have done that in an Excel situation, but with a limited scope so that you can quickly achieve and point to success. And then you just start. Just start. Get a win. Grow your scope. Get another win. Then another. Become a star. There are a host of other things that can make success even more certain in a BI project. And we at Microchannel really love talking about those kinds of things. But the number one way is to just get going. Now, just start's easy to say, but where and how, right? Well, again, we're going to talk about that a little bit later today, and we're always happy to explain in detail to our customers some of these ideas. But the idea of starting with something manageable hasn't always been a practical reality for BI and analytics. And to understand why, let's just take a look at where modern BI analytics has come from. And well, any discussion about BI almost inevitably focuses on two things. Where is our data and what can we do with it? So let's start with the first of those. Where is our data? And even as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, extensive BI projects were, in the most part, the domain of large enterprises trying hard to consolidate their data into a big single system of record, typically a top-tier ERP. And these kinds of projects were big, expensive, slow, focused on digesting data from their main system of record, and almost always run by sizable IT teams. And this is where the IBMs, the SAS, the SAPs, the Oracles, and all those similar old-style stack vendors were strong. The problem was, and as I said, it was costly, it was slow, it needed big teams. And then the world changed. Businesses increasingly started either replacing their one large system of record with multiple best-of-breed systems, or at the least, they started supplementing with those kinds of systems, taking a best-of-breed and just sticking on the edge of the core system where the core system didn't quite hit the mark. Additionally, data started to become available from other sources anyway. The kinds of things we touched on a moment ago on the previous slide, such as phones or websites, or the Internet of Things, or IoT as it's often called. Machines on the shop floor, trucks on the road, sensors in buildings, whatever. And cloud systems and data started to proliferate as well. Things changed. More data from more places with more users across more of the business, and the old approaches couldn't keep up. And then this change has been further exacerbated because the world changed again. And what changed in this case was the workforce and people. Every day, people become more used to living a data-influenced life, and the appetite for data grows. I'm a big fan of basketball. The ESPN website for the NBA now has a separate part just to talk about analytics as they apply to the NBA. And that is a public-facing website because there is that much interest and understanding around the importance of data these days. Casual data users expect more access to information and more ability to manipulate themselves than ever before. And what's the result? Increasingly, individual users or teams are pulling data out of these sources all by themselves, and then they find ways to manipulate it and to get the answers they need. And the world's most popular analytics tool, Microsoft Excel, is becoming the new ERP for far too many businesses. And this is a problem. Time gets burned by business users, truth gets lost, data becomes unreliable, and people are still frustrated and still not getting what they need. So for many businesses, there's lots of buzz around BI, but it's the kind of buzz that causes you a headache. Now, I mentioned there are two questions that keep popping up. Where is the data and what can we do with it? Well, let's look at the second one of those for a moment. What can we do with it? And then we're going to focus in on some of the things that are taking the headache away from all of this buzzing. And what does it mean? What can we actually do with our BI and analytics? Well, the answer is that we can do a lot of different things depending upon what we need, and honestly, depending on where we are in our BI journey. And to start with, it might look like responsive and to some extent interactive reporting, or what we might call enterprise reporting. Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, HTML, delivered on a schedule or on demand and out to scores or hundreds or thousands of recipients or more. It's reporting on steroids. And for a lot of businesses who are embarking on a journey to become more data-driven, the edges of their enterprise, the frontline workers, might not need or might not be ready for anything more than this, at least to start with, and that's okay. But it can also mean guided analytics. And this is a catch-all term for on-screen analysis of a defined but still broad pool of data, a way of letting users play within a pool of information that's been collected and curated for them, but where they can ask and answer a vast variety of different questions using intuitive, follow your own thinking type approaches to interrogating the data. Perhaps we could say drillable and filterable, but contained. And this is the first significant step in moving towards a truly data-driven environment within a business. However, more and more it also means self-service. It means end users, and maybe these end users are skilled with data and maybe they're not, taking the basic dashboards and pools of data that they've been given and building their own answers to questions that the designers hadn't even thought to ask. This is an attractive vision, but it's also one that's easy to dismiss as sales talk. And whilst complicated data is always going to be complicated data, modern tools and approaches, they can make data more accessible to more people than it's ever before been possible. And when you combine that with a world that is ever more hungry for data and users who are becoming more adept at using that data, self-service can be a reality for much more easily than you might think. Of course, that in turn leads to a whole different challenge, the concepts of governance and security with the data within a self-service data world. But there are solutions here too. Now, in some places, we can move to the next step in many respects here, and we can start to talk about embedded analytics. Analytics blended seamlessly into your software and your websites. And this means sitting within your business software environment and working with advanced analytics tools from right where you take the actions that this analysis has suggested. It means data from multiple sources brought together for end users to investigate on demand from right within your ERP or your CRM or whatever transactional tool you're using and you need. It means plugging your analysis tools into your website, be those public-facing or protected portals for key partners. Embedded analytics is where you can achieve some really incredible transformations within a business. I mean, transformative is a buzzword in its own right these days, but done right, BI can be a genuinely transformative tool for your business. And if you like these kinds of things, it's pretty exciting stuff. And almost as an inevitable next step for businesses for whom data is a culture, it means collaborative analysis. Internal and external users swimming through curated pools of data together to share insight and to deliver value to each other. And it's kind of the BI and analytics holy grail. End users, frontline staff, working with the data that they use daily and understand intimately to trickle insights through the business and back up to the strategic decision makers. Insights that people at a distance from the data might never have even realized was valuable, discovered and shared. But it also means an awareness for these same end users, these same frontline warriors, of the strategic impact of their decisions and their actions. And that awareness fed back down into the hands of the people that can take these day-to-day actions to implement it. There's a phrase that I often use in this space: what you don't measure, you don't care about, and what you don't know, you can't consider. And I think this is, in many respects, where we're trying to get to, and this is the end game here, to push out to the business what's important and what we care about, and to have the business trickle back up what is relevant to them and what we need to take into consideration when we're making our strategic decisions. The other part of collaboration is delivering your data to your business partners as well. Customers, suppliers, business partners of whatever kind, using your tools and information to derive their own value and in turn tying themselves closer to you. And it changes your relationship from something transactional and just another supplier or just another customer to something much more like a partnership. But having said all of this, let's keep in mind our aha moment. Maybe these last couple of things are the places to start. Maybe the use case is clear and compelling. We have some great customers that have gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour and jumped right in at this end of the process and changed the fundamental way their entire business works for the better. But it might not be you. And if not, keep the goal in mind, but find a place to start. Just start. So if we've got some idea of where we come from and what we can do, what's all the buzz? What's the latest and greatest? And we had a slide up there on the screen before. I'm going to touch on a few of the most commonly thrown around buzzwords, and the answers suggest that I did okay here in BI at the moment, and talk a little bit about them. And I focused on only a few here, and I've selected them either because I think they're the most common buzzwords that we're hearing out there, or they're the ones that have the most impact on how BI really does deliver into the business these days. There are lots of others out there though. And to start with, some of the most impactful recent buzz in the world of practical real-world BI is in-memory. This means, in essence, lifting data off of the hard drive and into memory. This drives a fundamental difference in how data needs to be prepared and can be worked with, because all of a sudden everything is happening so much faster. Huge chunks of data can be searched and sorted through all but instantly by end users, because reading from memory is so much faster than reading from the hard drive. It's difficult in many respects to overstate how important this is to the world of BI. It impacts every step of a BI project, from the initial build of the data layer all the way through to the end user experience. The next one here, data lakes. Data warehouses have been a part of the BI landscape forever. But because of the changes that we talked about earlier, more data, more sources, more changes to that data, more use cases, the process of building data warehouses is increasingly too slow to deliver the kinds of outcomes that a business needs. And this is one of these things that we'll talk about a bit later. It depends on your circumstance, but this can be a real serious problem for a business that is really diving into data. Data lakes are very similar, but the key difference between a data lake and a data warehouse is that a data lake usually holds more data from more sources, and that data is only transformed or blended in a limited way. It's essentially brought straight in. When the business identifies a need for the data, it's then pulled from the lake and transformed as required when we identify that we need it. Done right, this makes more data available to the business faster, without the overhead of transforming or blending that data until it's actually needed to deliver. And it helps prevent the problem that is very common in data warehouses of having to determine what I'm interested in before I've examined the data and really know what I'm interested in. Data wrangling is another one of these buzzwords, and it's simply another way of describing traditional ETL, ETL being extract, transform, and load processes. So extract, pulling data from its source, blending it with the other data, this is the transform, and transforming it as necessary with additional algorithms or whatever else might be necessary, and then making it available to your BI applications and to your users. Data wrangling, ETL, is often the most complex part of any BI project, and it's the part that we're constantly trying to speed up. And there have been some phenomenal improvements in the technology around data wrangling, fueled by things like in-memory, fueled by things like machine learning that we're going to look on further down here. And they enable the concept of data lakes to be much more effective as well. Now, data anarchy is the next and even more frustrating stage of what's often called Excel anarchy. And everyone's seen Excel anarchy. People pull data into Excel from whatever system and they play with it. Hopefully they keep that data true, but sometimes they get a calculation or a formula wrong, or they simply misunderstand what a particular field means and they use it the wrong way. Now they're proud of this new insight and they share it with their colleagues, who then incorporate it into their own decision making. And of course, if something was wrong with the original, this has now spread the problem, but it's also compounded the problem, because now new decisions are being made on faulty information, and often new analyses are created building upon that data as well. The other thing that happens is that we end up arguing about what is the truth. Where did you get that information about? And we stop worrying about outcomes and we start worrying about data. The point of the BI project, in many respects, is to make the actual data transparent and to just provide information and insight that is actionable to users. It spirals out of control, and that's when you get to Excel anarchy. And the result, as I said, is poor decisions, time wasted debating data, and loss of confidence in that data. And this loss of confidence, this is the last one, it can be particularly crippling to a business, because loss of confidence in your data stifles innovation. It kills new projects and processes on the vine because nobody trusts the rationale behind it. Data anarchy is the same thing in a self-service data world. It's Self-service analytics that nobody trusts and nobody can believe because it's not properly curated and governed. It's why data wrangling is so vital and why governance over a self-service data world is absolutely crucial. Now, possibly the noisiest buzz at the moment within BI is in artificial intelligence and machine learning and NLP, natural language processing. Artificial intelligence is essentially a catch-all for these other phrases, and at heart, machine learning works on a system of probability. Based on data fed to it, it's able to make statements or decisions or predictions with a certain degree of certainty. Feedback loop then allows learning. By sensing or by being told whether the decisions are right and wrong, the machine modifies the approach that it takes in future. Machine learning applications can read text, for example, and work out whether the person who wrote it's making a complaint or offering congratulations, sentiment analysis. They can also listen to a piece of music, decide whether it's likely to make someone happy or sad, and find pieces of music to match the mood. And that's a variation on people who bought this also liked. In BI applications, ML is used to identify data that is unusual and to bring it automatically to the attention of users for consideration and possible action. ML is a BI tool. Who says that the IT industry only ever uses three-letter acronyms? Is most commonly used on very large data sets to help refine the areas of interest. Now, as an addendum, there's another field of AI that I've put up on the screen here, natural language processing, NLP, back to a three-letter acronym, which attempts to understand natural human communication, either written or spoken, and to communicate in turn with us using similar natural language. ML is used here to help machines understand the vast nuances in human language and to learn to respond in a way that a particular audience is likely to comprehend. So the main BI application of natural language processing is to enable users to pose questions in normal language and to have the BI solution return appropriate information. In simple terms, it's to key in or verbally ask, for example, how much did we sell this quarter? And to have the BI tool search through data and return an answer to us in a way that makes sense to us. The last piece of buzz for today, and I'm going to talk about, is a relatively simple concept for many people in the business world that is increasingly becoming cloud first. The concept here is the storage and processing of data in the cloud. It's a fairly simple idea, but one to which there's long been a resistance within the world of BI for a variety of reasons. The most common two, probably security and speed. But for an increasing number of businesses, the benefits of accessing easily scalable storage and easily scalable processing abilities, provided at the kinds of costs that are made deeply competitive by the economies of scale that are available to cloud vendors, are starting to stack up very attractively. In a world where the amount of data that enterprises want to store is expanding rapidly, and the phrase that's or the statement that's thrown around a lot here is that the amount of data in the world doubles now every 2 years. This is a kind of trend that I think is set to grow. And given this, it's also no surprise that residing not just your BI data and processing tools, but your entire BI tool set in the same cloud environment is increasingly commonplace for the same very good reasons. Now, as is always the case with anything cloud in business, it isn't for everyone, but it is for more and more people every day. Now, we haven't really talked product today. Everything so far has been use case and concept and similar, and that's for a reason. One of the things that we think is really important about Microchannel's BI and analytics practice, it's right there in the name. We're a BI and analytics practice and not a product practice. Now, obviously, we need products and tools to deliver our solutions, but we do understand that not one size fits all. When we work with our customers, the variables include, and some of them are on screen, and this is not all of them either. They include the actual use case. How many people are going to be using the solution and from where? How complicated is the data? And this is something of a topic all by itself. And if you look on screen at the moment, you can see there's a nice little rule of thumb here for what type of data that you have based upon a fairly simple matrix of how much data do I have and how many places does it come from. Another variable is budget, because let's face it, money matters. An investment that makes sense for one company doesn't always make sense for another, even with the most ironclad business case. A crucial and sometimes overlooked variable is the appetite for BI within a business. Data-driven culture is a very big buzzword these days, but some people want to become data-driven, some already are. Some just want to take the next steps into concepts like predictive or Internet of Things, IoT. machine learning, all the other great buzzwords within this space. But some just want to take the first step away from reporting. And the answer is different in many cases, depending on each of these situations. Now, how big's your IT team? How closely do they want to be involved in a BI project? And how closely does the business want to be involved in its own BI projects and consumptions? How many users and what types of users, of course, matters, as does what kinds of data they're going to be working with. Is it sensitive? And of course, some businesses have preferences for or against certain vendors as well. All of this matters. Microchannel's BI and analytics practice can work with you to help you find the right solution to match these and all of the other requirements. So that is a lunchtime course in the buzz around BI. Why should you be interested? Where's the industry come from? Where is it today? What can you do with it? And what are some of the buzzing terms that you might hear? There's a huge amount more to talk about on this topic, and we're going to be running a number of these webinar sessions over the coming months with the intention that each is going to build upon each other. We're going to be running our next one, Business Intelligence 101, on the 26th of April next month, talking about the steps and processes in a concrete term around building a successful BI project. But we're also always very happy, of course, to talk directly to you about this topic. BI and analytics is something that my team and I are genuinely passionate about, and we really hope that we can deliver business value to you from this buzz. And that here is the point of these on-screen quotes. Complicated data is always going to be complicated data, but that doesn't mean that it should be complicated to use. As it says there, you shouldn't have to figure it out, you should be able to read it. The second one here harkens back to a point that I've made a couple of times. There are lots of stories about BI projects from the past that were costly and had limited success. And that, to some extent, has bred a culture of caution from when someone like me says BI doesn't have to be big or complex or costly. And that's fair enough. So, you've heard me say it before. Just start. Start small, but start with a real problem and solve it. See it work quickly. There's a buzz around BI for a reason. And now we might take a look at some of the questions that have come in and see what we've got here.
Okay, John, thank you very much for your brilliant BI expertise. I was just reading through the questions here. So naturally, we've got the questions, where do I start?
Yep. So yeah, I guess, I said just start. Where do I start? Where do I start? I guess it depends on your business to some extent. You can start, the common ones are start in sales analysis. I mean, that's always a very easy one for most businesses. This quick return, sales teams always have an enormous appetite for questions and answers and customer segmentation, all that type of thing. And no two salespeople ever want to see the information presented exactly the same way. So it's a classic BI and analytics use case. But another classic place to start is inventory analysis. What's in stock, what's not, what's moving, what's not, those types of things. Or maybe you're a manufacturer. Analysis from the shop floor line. All of those types of things. OEE, operating equipment efficiency. These types of things are another place to start. Geographical analysis is another one to start. I guess the short answer, it depends on what type of business you are, but I guess equally reach out to us, have a chat, talk to me, talk to my team. We've done this for lots and lots of people. Let's talk to you about what other people in your space are doing and where they're getting some quick wins, and go from there, I guess.
Okay, thanks, John. The next question is a logical one. What tool sets do you actually use then?
Yep, okay, that's fair enough. We did sort of push the tool sets into the background a little bit here, which was as I said in the presentation, was a conscious decision. Look, we have a few, and again, it depends which is most appropriate. The main ones that we work with are the Microsoft BI stack. And that is a bit of a stack, that's from Power BI through to Cortana intelligence platform and all the rest of the Microsoft stuff in there. We work with Focus, PHOCAS. That's a really great cloud analytics tool that we work with. We do a lot of work with Qlik, QLIK. which is a fantastic analytics platform. And then in certain cases where it's more around enterprise or business performance management, budgeting, forecasting, consolidation, those types of questions and analysis of that type of data, we use BI360 by Solver. They're probably the main tools that we work with, but there's a few others in there as well. It's as I push the tools to the background because it really is a case of, well, what's appropriate to your use case.
Okay, that makes great sense. So just reading the next question, what can be considered big in terms of data? So what is big data?
Yep. I hear this one a bit. It's such a piece of string type of a question, I guess. It's very, very relative, and it's relative to the tool sets you're using as well. So what is big to a well-cultivated data lake with an in-memory tool set over the top of it is very different to what is big for example, Microsoft Power BI. Generally, I will say in my world, for us to even start to talk about something as being big, you need to be talking at least in the hundreds of gigabytes and possibly bigger. But again, it's relative. And big is not all of it. It's very much also about, as we talked about on that data matrix there, not just how much, but where is it coming from? You can have very small volumes of data, but if it's coming from a whole bunch of different places, that can present its own challenges that might be far greater potentially than terabytes or zettabytes or petabytes or whatever of data from one single source. So what's big data is a relative statement, but probably just as important is, well, what's complicated data? Yeah, hopefully that's a helpful answer.
Okay. It looks like we've got one more question. Right, so this business and person, they do have a BI tool, but they're not getting what they need from it. They kind of need to understand where to go from there, what to do about it.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one. I come across that a little bit. Generally comes from two directions. Quite often I'll have people from within a business approach me and say, look, our enterprise-wide approach is tool X. Maybe it's, I don't know, Cognos. Let's just throw a name out there. And that's fine for what it does. But for all the reasons we talked about before, it's not scratching my itch properly. It's not fast enough. It doesn't mean to me what it needs to mean or whatever. We get those types of conversations. Sometimes we get, and this sounds like this might be it potentially, where it's just, we tried it and it just didn't work for whatever reason. I mean, we have one customer who, by the time they came to us, had 2 tries and fails at a BI project. Third time was the charm for them. I guess, what do you do about that? Obviously, my statement is talk to us. But again, it depends on the situation. So there's no reason that even if you've got a certain BI tool in place, if the use case is not being addressed by that BI tool, very often you can take another tool set and use the data that's been curated from that other one and build on top of it. So, it's not at all uncommon for us to have someone who has, say, a Cognos or something like that, or even an SAP BW, not getting what they need out of it, but they've invested a lot of time and effort in setting it up and they don't want to throw that investment away. So we can use that as a data source for these other tools and then use that as the core and keep all of the work that's gone into that, and then just blend in our additional data sources and our new data over time with the new tool set and present it out to users, again, potentially with the new tool set or even with the old one. We even have one customer who has a monstrous deployment of all kinds of Microsoft stuff that they support themselves, don't want us to get involved, whatever. What they use, they took a small Click deployment from us, and they use Click for rapid prototyping because it's so much quicker and faster to build this stuff that they ingest new data into Click, they build out some prototypes, they prove the use case, and then when everyone's happy and they know that this makes sense, they then go back to their big Microsoft stack toolkit and build the complete outcome